You have until Friday to be out of this penthouse, the billionaire husband said, slamming divorce papers on the marble table. Agnes deserves a real home. You've just been occupying space. Asterisk, asterisk. She smiled, collected the scattered papers with steady hands, and whispered, You built an empire on my family's foundation. Let me show you what happens when the foundation walks away. Hi, my beautiful family. My queens who've been called just a wife, just support, just behind the scenes, this story is for you. If you've ever built something with your bare hands and watched someone else take the credit, like this story, if you've ever been the invisible hand behind someone's success, comment, I see you. Because this isn't about revenge. This is about reckoning. Victor Cole slammed divorce papers on the Italian marble Ariana had sourced herself. Agnes deserves a real home. You've just been occupying space. Ariana didn't flinch. She'd stopped flinching months ago when she'd caught Agnes Watson's perfume on his collar and realized silence held more power than screaming. Agnes appeared from the archway in black, arms crossed. Baby, is she still here? Ariana knelt, gathering papers one by one, her wedding ring catching light purchased with her trust fund, though Victor had rewritten that story. When she stood, her posture was perfect. Old money posture, the kind you can't buy. Understand? Ariana's voice was surgical. You're standing in a penthouse I designed, Victor. Every window, every fixture. I negotiated that view into the purchase contract. She aligned the papers perfectly. You built an empire on my family's foundation. My connections opened doors you couldn't find. My strategies shaped your deals. My trust funds seeded your ventures. Victor's jaw tightened his boardroom intimidation face. Learned from watching her father negotiate. You think you can threaten me? Threaten? Ariana picked up her phone. I'm just tired of holding you up. She walked past them, heels clicking against floors she'd chosen. In the hallway, she pressed a contact. Thomas, it's Ariana Cole. Yes, it's time. Audit the marriage. Every contribution, every connection, every dollar. Through the door, she heard Victor's raised voice, the sounds of people realizing the ground had shifted. And Thomas? Use the prenuptial agreement. The one with the contribution clause. The one Victor never actually read. The foundation was leaving. Let them see what remained. Thomas Grayson's office smelled like old money. Victor had signed the prenuptial without reading past page 3. Too busy celebrating his engagement to notice the buried clauses. He was in love, Ariana said, and confident. He genuinely believed he'd build his empire without me. Asterisk, asterisk. 7 years earlier. Asterisk, asterisk. Victor had been handsome, ambitious, and broke. His startup had promise but no funding, no access to rooms where real money lived. He'd met Ariana at her family's charity gala. Their first date, she'd made suggestions he didn't realize were suggestions. Have you considered enterprise clients? By morning, he'd rewritten his business model. 3 months later, he'd secured his first major contract. Her trust fund seeded his Series A $2.3 million. Her father's golf partner introduced him to Vector Capital. Her mother's college roommate approved his first acquisition. Door after door, opened by hands Victor never saw. The Mendez account? She'd asked one night. Their CFO went to Dartmouth with my cousin. 2 weeks later, Victor closed his biggest deal. Thomas reviewed financial records. The prenuptial specifies that all contributions, financial and intellectual, remain protected. Any business built using resources from either party remains joint property until contributions are fully repaid with interest. He looked up. If we enforce this, Victor would owe you approximately $47 million. I want him to hear it first, Ariana said. In front of his lawyers. In front of his board. This will devastate his liquidity. No, this will reveal it. Victor's empire isn't being destroyed, it's being audited. Thomas's smile was sharp. He can't divorce you without paying you back first. Then let's send him the bill. Every door I opened, every strategy I whispered, every dollar I invested. The invisible wife was becoming visible, and she kept receipts. From her hotel suite overlooking Central Park, Ariana made calls. She'd been rehearsing for 7 years. Richard? It's Ariana Cole. I need to discuss Victor's portfolio. I think you should review the origin of his seed funding. Another call. Margaret, darling, Victor and I are separating. Unfortunate given how many contracts came through personal introductions. The Mendez account, for instance. By the third call, her voice had found its rhythm. Not angry, not vindictive. Simply factual, correcting the record, one relationship at a time. Her lawyer, Patricia, documented every wire transfer, every investment Victor had rebranded as his own acumen. Within 48 hours, tremors started. Board members asking questions, investors requesting documentation, the invisible architecture of his success becoming visible with her name carved into every cornerstone. Day 4 brought the text. We need to talk. The Singapore deal fell through. Victor called. What did you do? I didn't do anything, Victor. I simply stopped doing everything. The Singapore investors pulled out. James Chen said the Cole family has concerns about my business practices. The foundation is calling in its debts, Victor. Every door I opened, every connection I facilitated, every dollar I invested, they were loans, not gifts. And loans come due. She ended the call. There were still so many doors to close. Her office was smaller than Victor's, deliberately so. The door read, Cole Capital. She'd earned that name through 7 years of invisible architecture. Her pitch was surgical. I've been making winners for years. Now I'm doing it under my own name. Marcus Rivera, Victor's top analyst, was first to jump. You buried the real insight in footnote 7 because Victor doesn't read past executive summaries. You're wasting your talent. Sarah Chin and James Park followed within weeks. At the Pemberton Foundation Gala, Ariana wore navy silk and her grandmother's pearls. Victor stood at the bar with Agnes, who'd chosen a dress cut too low for the room. He seemed smaller, or perhaps Ariana had simply stopped making herself small. Their eyes met. Ariana was surrounded by investors, 3 formerly Victors, asking her opinion. Richard laughed at something she'd said. Margaret touched her arm with familiar affection. She existed in the center of power, not its margins. She raised her champagne glass slightly. Not a toast. An acknowledgement. Victor's jaw tightened. That boardroom face he wore when he'd already lost. She'd simply announced she was playing. Agnes had imagined the penthouse would feel like triumph, but it felt like wearing someone else's skin. Carlos, the doorman, offered only curt nods. Maria, the housekeeper, said, Miss Watson, not Mrs. Cole. Never Mrs. Cole. The distinction landed like a slap every time. Society invitations stopped coming. She was addressed as guest. At the gala, old money women looked through her like decorative furniture. Whispers followed, that's the girlfriend. She won a sinking ship. Victor's mood darkened with his bank statements. Bills sat on the counter with red stamps. He snapped at her constantly. Maybe we should cut back, Agnes suggested carefully. Things are fine. His voice was sharp. I built this empire. A few bumps don't destroy foundations. But Agnes was understanding that Victor hadn't built anything. He'd borrowed someone else's foundation. She found the note in the linen closet. Elegant script on cream paper. Enjoy the penthouse. I designed every inch of it. But a beautiful cage is still a cage. Agnes sat on the bathroom floor and looked around the space she'd thought was victory. Every detail chosen by a woman who'd walked away like it meant nothing. Because to Ariana, it had meant nothing. The penthouse was just a cage she'd stopped needing. The board meeting started late because Victor couldn't find projections. His assistant had quit, poached by Cole Capital. The quarterly numbers reflect temporary market adjustments, Victor said. Margaret Chen leaned forward. Victor, we've lost 3 major clients in 6 weeks. The Singapore expansion collapsed. Our top analysts resigned. We're hemorrhaging, Richard Thompson interrupted. Revenue down 18%. The Mendez account terminated, citing concerns about relationship continuity. James Mendez and I have a strong relationship. You mean James Mendez and Ariana's cousin have a strong relationship? Margaret said quietly. You were just the beneficiary, until you weren't. No one met Victor's eyes. His lawyer called. Ariana's legal team sent their calculation. Victor, did you read the prenuptial before signing? What's the number? $47 million. Plus compounding interest. The agreement stipulates all marital assets remain joint property until her contributions are fully repaid. You can't finalize the divorce until 47 million? Victor's voice cracked. He didn't have that in liquid assets. His CFO appeared. If we pay what Mrs. Cole is owed, we'll liquidate significant assets. Even then, we'd leverage the company's equity. Which means what? This could trigger a hostile takeover. Margaret closed her folder. I think we need to discuss succession planning. Victor understood with perfect clarity. She hadn't destroyed his empire. She'd simply stopped holding it up. Rumors spread. Someone was systematically acquiring Victor's stock. Steadily. Deliberately. Who's buying the stock? Victor demanded at the emergency board meeting. Tie crooked. Eyes red-rimmed. Margaret exchanged a glance with Richard. They'd already had conversations Victor wasn't invited to. Jonathan, his lawyer, stared at his screen, pale. The primary filing just came through. The entity is Grayson Holdings, LLC. The managing partner is Ariana Grayson Cole. She used her maiden name. Silence. The stunned silence of watching a rabbit become a tiger. Her trust fund was worth substantially more than she invested in your company, Margaret said, and Cole Capital has been performing exceptionally well. She has the capital, Victor. She's always had it. The math crystallized. The 47 million she was owed. Her thriving firm. Her family's old money. She'd waited for him to weaken, then stepped in to acquire what had always been partially hers. How much does she own? 23%. Combined with sympathetic board members. Jonathan didn't finish. Victor looked around. The board wasn't his anymore. Maybe it never had been. She's coming for the company, Victor whispered. No, Margaret corrected. She's coming to take back what was always hers. There's a difference. His phone buzzed. Emergency shareholder meeting requested. 10 a.m. tomorrow. Come prepared. The silent partner was speaking. Ariana walked in at exactly 10 o'clock, wearing a charcoal power suit. She stood at the table's end, hands resting lightly on a chair back. Good morning, Victor. Shall we begin? Thomas slid documents down the table. Grayson Holdings is exercising its option to acquire controlling interest in Cole Enterprises. We hold 41%. Combined with proxy votes, we have sufficient authority to proceed with restructuring. This is a hostile takeover, Jonathan said. No, Ariana corrected. This is a repossession. She moved around the table slowly. The Singapore expansion failed because James Chin's committee wouldn't back a company built on undisclosed marital assets. The Mendez account terminated because my cousin asked if I still felt comfortable endorsing your practices. I said no. Vector Capital withdrew because Richard Thompson called to verify the rumors. I told him they were true. She reached his end. Marcus, Sarah, and James left because I told them the truth. They were brilliant, and they were wasting their talent making you look smart. How long have you been planning this? Ariana looked at him, her expression soft. Not forgiveness. Pity. Certainly. I wasn't planning anything, Victor. I was just tired of holding you up. You're not falling. I just stopped catching you. She placed a document before him. This is the settlement offer. Accept it. Step down gracefully. Retain a minority stake. Or we proceed with a full audit and let the business press write the story. Victor stared at numbers representing everything he'd thought he'd built. You win, he whispered. No, I just stopped losing. Victor's Murray Hill apartment was the kind of place a mid-level manager might celebrate. 2 bedrooms, IKEA furniture. For someone who'd lived in a penthouse, it felt like a confession. Agnes had left when the settlement money dried up. Her text, I didn't sign up for this. He scrolled through business news. Self-made billionaire Ariana Cole closes landmark healthcare investment. Cole Capital outperforms market by 34%. Ariana Cole, named to Fortune's most powerful women. The articles never mentioned him. He'd become a footnote, the man who mistook his wife's foundation for his own genius. She hadn't destroyed him. She'd revealed him. Without her connections, strategy, capital, he was exactly what he'd always been. Ambitious, but not a titan. Just a man held up by someone he'd stopped seeing. Across town, Ariana reviewed projections with her team. Marcus, Sarah, James, all thriving. Excellent work, Marcus. Make sure your name is first on the press release. Thomas stopped by. Your grandmother would be proud. She'd say I took too long. But yes, I think she would be. Her Brooklyn Heights brownstone was a century old. Windows overlooking tree-lined streets instead of glittering skylines. She'd bought it herself, with money she'd earned. Every corner felt like freedom. At dinner, friends sat around her table with good wine and genuine laughter. Margaret told boarding school stories. Marcus and Sarah debated strategies while stealing bread from the same basket. Ariana looked around at faces lit by candlelight and felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Not triumph, not vindication, just peace. She'd stopped being invisible, not because she'd destroyed someone else, but because she'd built something entirely her own. The penthouse had been beautiful, but it had always been a cage. This messy, imperfect, authentic life, this was liberation. She raised her glass. To new beginnings. Voices echoed her toast. And through the brownstone windows, the Brooklyn evening settled soft and unhurried, full of promise, and entirely hers.